What's important to you? My mission is to ask as many people as possible this question, because I believe once you know what's important, you can design and build a life of purpose, meaning, and fulfillment. My name is James Dean. I'm a life coach, and I hope this podcast inspires you to uncover what's important to you. You can follow me on Instagram and Facebook at James Dean Coaching, or connect with me on LinkedIn. You can also learn how I can help you understand what's important at jamesdeancoaching.com. Today's guest is an award-winning zero-waste wedding and event caterer. She is a TV chef, recipe contributor, podcaster, speaker, writer, and mother of 3 young girls. She celebrates the very best of seasonal Irish produce in everything that she does, and works tirelessly to promote the efforts of Irish food producers. She is the first person to offer couples the opportunity to celebrate their nuptials by using rescued surplus foods, and save upwards of 225 kilograms of perfectly good food from going to waste for an average wedding, without compromising on taste or quality. Today, we find out what's important to Orla McAndrew. Hi, Orla. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Pleasure to be with you, James.
Yeah, really looking forward to chatting to you. And we're going to dive straight in, Orla, with the first question, which is, what's important to you?
It's such a good question, isn't it? It's such a
Yeah.
good question. The first thing that springs to mind when I hear that question is always going to be my 3 girls. They are the most important thing to me in my life. And they influence all the decisions I make, and they are the reason behind why I do everything that I do. So my 3 girls are the most important thing to me, number 1. And number 2 is around food and food waste and an education piece there. Like that's really feels like an important part of who I am and where I'm going and what I'm about.
Mm. That's interesting. I'm not in any way surprised. Obviously, your children being the number one, and but I'm interested in the sense of how the decisions you make are based on themselves. So that how they're the center of every decision you make, which I think is quite an interesting thing. But because I know obviously that you're a chef and a caterer, but I find it interesting. The first thing you say is not necessarily food; it's about food waste. So
Yes.
tell me, because it would have been maybe my assumption that someone who's, is sort of professional into food, or a chef, a cook, or a caterer, would just be about food and flavor. So tell me, why is the food waste above everything else?
Okay. So I started my business about 5 years ago, and it came from absolutely nowhere.
Mm,
I had no experience. I just happened to meet a girl one day who said she was looking for a caterer for her wedding in 6 weeks.
right.
And I was looking for an opportunity. I was a stay-at-home mum at that stage. And I was 39. I was beginning to feel, what am I ever going to do with my life? I had loads of qualifications, but I wasn't anything in particular. And so I jumped at that opportunity, and that was kind of the start of the rest of my life. But I catered this incredible wedding. The food was amazing. Food is so important to me as well,
Mm,
actually, really
yeah.
important to me. But what I learned from that first wedding was, oh my God, I really need to know how to cater for large quantities of people and know how to do that properly. Because even though the wedding was an unbelievable success, it was
Mm,
gorgeous. Like everyone was raving about it. The amount of food waste afterwards was horrific, absolutely horrific. And I just knew in that moment that if I was going to do this, I had to
mm,
get really serious about managing that, because it was just abhorrent, like it was
yeah.
terrible. So fast forward a couple of years, I'm finding my feet. I'm doing all sorts of catering jobs, Christmases or christenings, Christmas
Yeah.
dinners, all sorts of things, and I'm learning as I'm going.
Yeah.
And that was a really important part of my journey. It was all from scratch. I hadn't a clue, and I was learning as I went. But that kernel of food waste was there all the time, and I
Mm,
was honing that skill so that by 2 years in, I had portion control down to such a fine art that there's literally no waste. There has been no waste from any of my events. And that's been amazing, but I wanted to do even more. I wanted to take it a step further. So last year, it's something that I was working on for about 18 months before I actually launched it. I launched the concept of zero waste weddings. I don't know if you come across that.
Yeah.
But what that is it's really an education piece. It's an education tool. I think it has the potential to kind of reshape the way we do things. Like, I'm really passionate about it because what I'm doing is I'm taking surplus food from my regular suppliers on the week of an event, the week of a wedding. I don't know what I'm going to get. My bride and groom, or my couple, whoever they are, don't know what's going to be on the menu.
Wow.
And with their trust and the surplus food that I receive, we create a completely unique wedding menu that, you know, is based entirely on what I've rescued that may end up wasted. So the creativity of that, like, it sets me on fire. I absolutely love that challenge. Like, it's phenomenal. I love the fact that the couple is trusting me to deliver this. The food that I produce out of this surplus is the best food I ever produce because I'm on fire creatively.
Yeah.
But it's the fact that all of the people, all of the guests at that wedding are aware that this is something completely different. It's a real talking piece where food waste might never be on their radar. They're looking at this incredible food that somebody has produced out of what might have gone to waste. And it's that the knock-on effect, and people getting in touch with me afterwards saying, wow, I'm really starting to think more about the food that we're buying, the food that we're wasting, what can be done. And it's that kind of communication and relationship building within my own business and within my Instagram page. I love all that. It's really powerful for me.
So I just want to make sure I clarify. So it's just the week of the wedding.
Yes.
Wow. That is, as you say, the level of trust from the couple who you're working for, essentially, and then the trust in yourself to think that I'm going to be able to come up with something.
Yeah. Do you know what? That kind of blows me away.
Yeah.
And that's something that's been like, it's one of those building blocks that I'm really aware of, that trust in myself. And I'm really proud of that trust in myself.
Yeah.
And it's kind of part of my overall personality is there are no problems, there are only solutions, kind of thing.
Love it. Yeah.
And I am really, I suppose, open and positive and forward thinking. And like, I'll give you an example. Last year was my busiest year in catering. Like, I'd spent the whole pandemic getting my business really up off the ground. And sometimes you have to be careful what you wish for, because I was completely sold out. You know, I had an amazing summer, but in the January before the summer kicked off, I had no staff. I had no staff whatsoever. I had all these bookings.
Yes.
And I had some people, you know, who had worked with me from time to time, but I had absolute blind faith that I would be fine. And I didn't give it any mental space at all. I was like, I will have people. That is not a problem. I'm not even going to spend time thinking about it.
Yeah.
And for the first event, I had like 8 staff who I didn't actually need, who I said, I'll use you guys the next day. And from there, I've got an incredible staff team of over 40 people on my book now.
Wow.
But just as an example of just sheer blind positivity.
Yeah.
You know, and like, there's huge risk of, imagine like a wedding for 200 people in a castle and it's just me turning up. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's the positivity element that I think has been really beneficial. And that blind faith in myself, I suppose, that I will deliver, because at the end of the day, it's somebody's wedding and you can't get that wrong.
Yeah.
Like, there is no option.
Yeah, absolutely. But even just the add-on for that, I'd say as well, it's not, as you say, it's not necessarily you're just catering for a small wedding for like 30 people. Do you know what I mean? It's like you're doing big events as well. So it's not a case of, oh, you're a bespoke zero waste, but we're only going to be doing 50 people. It's big events as well.
Huge event. I've had an event for 600 people. You
Wow.
know, it's and the numbers actually don't matter. It's funny.
Yeah.
That would have freaked me out initially. Like, oh my God, how
Yes.
it once you know what you're doing and you have the right amount of people, it actually makes no difference whatsoever in the kitchen from
Yes.
50 to 1,000. You're just doing it for a little bit longer, which
Yes.
is great learning for me as well. So I'm never freaked out by numbers anymore.
That's amazing. And because I suppose that to go back to the sort of the whole thing of the wedding as well, in the sense of the couple and the sort of, because it's, you know, I'm thinking back to my own sort of wedding is sort of over 10 years ago now. And part of the whole process, in a sense of as a couple, we went through the whole thing. We did like the venue we booked. We had it within house within the venue we had, and you do the whole menu testing thing. A part of it's, you know, was part of the whole process. So I'm interested in the sense, obviously, with the going back to the couple or the people that you're working with. How soon do they know the menu? You know, because I knew months ahead. Could have been even 6 months ahead. I knew what we were going to be having for the wedding meal. How soon do they actually know?
For some people, when it's in front of them,
Wow.
because I don't have time to get to them
Yeah.
on the morning of. And for others, it's kind of the morning of, just
Wow.
a quick little call and
Yeah.
this is what you're doing. Okay, brilliant. But
Love it.
I think those people are incredible. Like
Yeah.
just the absolute trust and
Yeah.
there's a sense of excitement around
I was
it
gonna
as
say,
well.
yeah.
Yeah. And they're really in my experience to date, they've been the most sort of grateful and
Yeah.
thankful and appreciative of the work that goes in, because I think they understand it's actually a hell of a lot more work to do a zero waste wedding.
Yeah.
Because
Imagine.
if you think of it, yeah, because if you think of it, it's you know, it's one thing doing a wedding and ordering in your stuff and having it all counted and it's all prepared beautifully and all you have to do is cook it, and that's a job in itself, like it really is.
Yeah.
But it's then when you're getting odd cuts of meat and you're having to try and work out A, what to do with it, B, how to access it, you know, might be on the bone or could
Yeah.
be strange pieces of fish or whatever it is. There's a lot more actual work in getting that food readily available. And that's part of the problem, I suppose. Part of the reason why people don't do this. It's, you know, it's
Yeah.
become so much easier to
Yeah.
just get your slab of meat or your chicken breast or whatever it is that you're ordering in. So I can see from a practical point of view why people don't do
Yeah.
what I'm doing, but also it can be done.
Yeah.
So
And and do you find with I'm interested in the sense of the couples that you work with as well, are they working with you, one, because of the food you produce and just the quality of the catering and the food that you produce, or is there an element of the fact that actually they've got this consciousness in mind of this zero waste perspective? Is it, you know, is it which way can you tell which way where they're coming from? Is it because they've got that zero waste perspective, or is it the food, or is it a combination of both?
it's not what I would have thought it was,
Yeah.
right? So I still do ordinary, I call them
Yeah.
ordinary weddings, so
Yeah.
not zero waste. And I'm about 50-50 now
Right.
between, you know, who goes zero waste and who goes with
Yeah.
my ordinary offering. And the people who go zero waste, I'd say it's 50-50 with them as well. Sometimes I just mention the idea. They know who I am, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah.
They know me. And I mention this offering and they kind of, it's like a really easy sell to them. It's like really
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, that sounds good. That sounds interesting. And the biggest thing that they have in common is they're like, oh, that's one less thing we have to decide on.
Yeah.
That blew my
Interesting.
mind. Do you know,
Yes.
it's kind of the decision overwhelm. You're taking that away from them. It's out of their
Yes.
hands.
That's a really interesting insight.
Isn't it?
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
really,
that kind of, yeah, it's unexpected. And
yeah.
as well, I suppose when I started this, I thought that I might have a 10-year hard flog. Like
Yeah.
I thought nobody's going to go for this. You know,
Yeah.
like I said, your wedding's really important. You love to know what's on the menu.
Yeah.
Your your friends and family want to be exquisite, you know. It's really
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
So the idea, I don't know if I would go for it. Like the idea
Yeah.
of leaving it in somebody else's hands and having absolutely no idea.
Mm.
I'm blown away with how receptive people are to
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. But it's interesting because see here in you're reminding me here in Mullingar, there's a lady actually she joined me on the podcast last year. Her name's Evelyn Fitzpatrick, and she opened up the first zero waste shop, I think in Westmeath here in Mullingar. So yeah, and so she kind of her sort of thing that she'd sort of seen it somewhere else where she was on her travels, maybe in New Zealand or something, and then she's seen it again in London or even in Dublin, and she was like, I want to do this,
Do
and
this.
she realized the impact, and she kind of had that similar maybe, was it, is this going to, will people
Go.
buy into this,
Yeah.
the maybe the perspective she had of like, well, maybe it'll work in Dublin, but will it really work in a sort of rural island as such in the middle of Mullingar, and it's flying, so it really is doing well. So I, in some ways, I could see where your thinking was, oh, this is going to take a bit more time to get the sort of the people to buy into this
Yes.
perspective. And then I find it then it's surprising when actually people are more either one, aware of it, conscious of it, or as you say, they go, yeah, that sounds like, yeah, take the decision away. I've got enough to worry about. If you've got it, it's that thing of if someone, it's the cliche of like build it and they will come type thing.
Literally.
You provide the option and they go, yeah, I'll take that.
Yeah, exactly that. And as you say, it's very obvious that, collectively we are way more aware now
Yeah,
than even 10 years ago. I mean, we have no
totally.
option. It's slapping us in the face how sort of broken all our food systems are, and
Yeah,
our capitalist system. All of it is, it's in our faces now. And I think you'd want to have your head absolutely buried under the sand if you
yeah,
weren't aware of the fact that we need to make some drastic changes
massive.
about
Yeah,
the way we
absolutely.
do things.
Yeah,
So I think as well, this is like, it's a wonderful way for people to start off married life and kind of show that this stuff matters to them. So,
yeah,
I was saying 50-50 people who are like, oh yeah, I'll go for that. The other 50 they've sought me out.
yeah,
They know what I'm doing, and they are gung ho that this is important to them. And
yeah,
it kind of makes them express their values to their nearest and
yeah,
dearest. And I think
yeah.
that's just brilliantly brave of them.
Yeah. As you say, then it also becomes um, a talking point for the wedding as well, in a sense of, I'm sure do you ever come across where you start to almost hear or feel that buzz when they start talking? Because that's one of the big things for a wedding. Obviously, when, again, going back to my own wedding, or I was at my wife's cousin's wedding last year, and it's like, they're constantly, how's the food? How's the food? It's this thing of everyone's checking. So do you get that sort of sense on the day of how's it
We
going?
totally do. We totally do. And actually, sometimes I feel like I'm gate crashing the wedding because I spend a lot of time actually talking with people, and they're
Yeah.
interested to know how this works. And
Yeah.
so it's like dinner and a show because
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I'd often come out and explain a bit about it and talk about how their dishes were made or how they came up, or it's a very immersive kind of a thing. And
Yeah.
even my staff are so well trained in, and well versed in what's happening, and we become part of like a really memorable part of the day,
Yeah.
which is so gorgeous. Like there's
Yeah.
real deep connection between
Mm.
the whole staff team and the people who are on the day. I think it's something that neither will forget. Do you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
really lovely.
Yeah, totally. No, I can really, the way you're describing it, I can really get the sense of that. And I could really understand in a sense of the connection, in a sense of, because people would, because it would be still at the moment probably that unusual. Like, if you were a guest, you'd like, no, what, you came up with it yesterday, today, two days ago, the morning of. Yeah, exactly. I find that you can see how that would be, and even if there'll be, I'm sure there'll be guests who are kind of like, it would resonate with them immediately, or the people who had that, and then there'll be other people who almost would be in probably quite disbelief that it's
Yes.
possible.
Yeah, because a wedding is, it's people from 8 to 80 and
Yes.
outside of that. So, and what in my this is just my experience of it, it's the actually the older people are more blown away, and that's because they most likely remember a time when it was like this.
Yeah.
and they appreciate that because that's all I'm doing. I'm bringing it
Yep.
back to how it would have been.
Yep.
Like the way we sort of disrespect and disregard the food that we now have
Yeah.
is so mind-blowing to me. And I know, like my grandfather was a gardener in a big old house, and my granny was the cook.
Right.
This was 𝙤𝙤𝙣𝙈𝙤𝙤𝙦 house in Castlereagh in County Roscommon. That's how they met. So even in, my grandparents'
Yeah.
times, the way I'm cooking now is exactly how it would have been done.
Yeah.
You're just making the most of the food that's
Yeah.
available to you, and you're
Yeah.
respecting it.
Yeah.
You know,
Love it.
and so that it's the older people in particular really want to talk to me and commend me for what I'm doing, and it maybe that kind of, I don't know if they're lamenting or just appreciating
Yeah.
that somebody is taking really good care of food, because
Yeah.
it's just it's not the norm, is it? Like
No,
it's everything's
absolutely.
so readily available, so
Yeah.
disposable, so cheap, you know, like it just lends itself to not caring about it. And
Yeah.
it's no wonder that in Ireland we waste upwards of, and I think this is really conservative, but this is the going,
Mm.
figure, €700 worth per annum. I would say that is
Yeah.
extremely
Low.
conservative,
Yeah. Yeah.
really low, because look at, we do our big weekly shop, we pack our fridges full to the gills. It's so cheap that if we don't get to use it up, sure, what about it? Dump it and get it the next week. And that is across the board. Everybody I speak to will say, kind of half guiltily, "Oh God, I'm so guilty of that."
Mm.
Sure, if we eat what we buy,
Yeah.
that's like, literally, I've made that into a hashtag. Eat what you buy.
Yeah.
It's literally that simple.
Yeah.
Like, and yeah, sorry, go on.
No, no, no. It is. It's kind of like, because it's one of those things that I would do. I would do the shopping in sort of for myself and my wife. So I'm just. It's just the way things work out, because I would do majority of the cooking as such. And even it's like now, it's like when I'm going around the shops, I'm because things change, I suppose, because of COVID and working from home and stuff. I can go to the shops more regularly than I would have done previously.
Yeah.
And in a sort of previous, when I was more in the office full time, I would have done batch cooking and have frozen it and stuff like that, and I would have just brought it
Yeah.
out. I don't necessarily need to do that anymore because I've got that bit more time. But even when I'm going around the shops now, the sort of the discipline I have is not necessarily having a list as such, but I'm like, right, okay, I've got to do 5 meals, 5 dinners, for example. So I only need to buy, and I'm check the cupboards before I leave. It's like, no, I'll check the freezer. Oh no, I've got
Brilliant.
that. So that's one night, that's 2 nights. And it's almost like, then it's like, once you've got the 5 meals that I'm going to, before I need to come back to the shop,
Yeah.
stop putting stuff in the trolley.
Yeah.
It's like, it's literally having that discipline. And even little things that I changed myself, just as we're on a subject, like I would have gone and bought, say, fresh veg, for example, like peppers, courgettes, and things like that.
Yeah.
And I get to the end of the week or whatever, and I was like, oh, I haven't used them again. I'm like, and you get so tick, and I'm like, so I switched. So I started buying bags of mixed frozen veg.
Okay. Yeah.
So because it was like, I'm still getting the veg, but I'm not wasting this food. So it
Yeah.
was even having the consciousness to go, because there's that part of me, oh, I really should buy fresh. And it's like, but it's like,
If
if
you're
I don't
wasting
use it, I'm throwing it
it.
away. If I
Yeah.
buy it pre-made, frozen, it's just as
Yeah.
good. I'm not throwing it. So it's having that sort of consciousness sometimes to go, well, actually, are you
Is there
buying
a
it
better way?
because you think you need to buy it, or are you buying it because you're actually going to use it?
Yeah. And I really applaud that. I think like our freezers can be our best friends. Like that idea of batch cooking,
Yeah,
brilliant. And if you don't need to do that anymore, that's fine too. But uh the freezer is fantastic for
yeah,
vegetables. I personally have great relationships with my local growers, so I like to buy fresh as much as possible.
yeah,
I
of course.
always have a stash of kind of frozen bits as well. But it's also, if you get to the end of the week and you have your sad looking peppers or your sad looking bits and bobs, just chuck it into a soup.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, do something with it.
with it.
Even if,
Yeah.
like, this is the thing, people, we don't, and I hate sometimes when I'm talking about this, I'm like, oh my God, you're pontificating again.
No, no, go for it.
But it's just realizing that things don't have to look magnificent
Yeah,
to be perfectly edible,
yeah,
actually, and perfectly usable. And it's about the wonky veg or the tired looking bits. Like even if you have tired looking salad leaves, it's about finding out ways of refreshing those, you know, the best ways to store things, the best ways to extend the shelf life of our food. And it's like this little, it's like a, you dive into a hole. Once your awareness is peaked,
Yeah.
there's so much we can learn and so much we can change. And slowly and gradually, like Rome wasn't built in a day.
Yeah.
I'm learning. I'm very much on the journey myself because I'm 44 years old. I'm a product of growing up where everything was readily available.
Yeah.
Chicken came wrapped in plastic. You know, that's the life that I
Yeah.
have lived to now. So this is a journey for me as well, and I'm
Yeah.
really passionate about kind of sharing my learnings and just sharing my tips. And if it makes impact on anybody to
Mm.
just think differently, then they're off on their own little journey after that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Um, we will, I'm sure that the sort of the sustainability part and the zero waste will keep coming back through the conversation. But I'm also interested in the sense of, because you said was it 6 years ago when you decided to kind of go into the sort of the catering on a
Yeah,
decision,
fine.
you know, in a sense you needed to do it. Where did the whole then love of food come from, in a sense of, you know, you being a caterer and a chef, you know, where did that
Okay,
inspiration
well,
come
that love of food is there all my life. Like, I'm
from?
obsessed, like
Mm.
obsessed with food. Um, and so much so that, and my mum is an amazing chef. My granny, as I said, was a cook
Yeah.
in the big old houses. Food is hugely important in our family. Um, and I suppose realistically, I probably always wanted to be a chef, but I put it
Yeah.
off because I thought, right, very bad pay,
Yeah.
bad social hours. You know, it took me until I was 25 until I went, no, I really kind of have to, it
Yeah.
has to be food for me. I was kind of on that whole, what do I want to be? What do I want to do?
Yeah.
So went back at that stage and did a degree in culinary arts. But I was 28 when I qualified, and
Yeah.
this is the thing for me. I came out and went in as a commis chef into kitchens where people expected me to know so much more than I knew, you
Yeah.
know? So I never really lasted anywhere. I was very kind of discouraged, very deflated, um, and thought, God, I've just wasted 3 years of my life doing this degree, and I hate
Yeah.
it. Like, I really
Right.
hated being in a professional kitchen because I was useless to them. You know, I
Yeah.
hadn't a clue. I did a 3 year degree, but it was really a business degree. There was
Yeah.
very little cooking. We were the first year. They've kind of changed the way to do it now, which is brilliant. It's a great course now. It wasn't a great course when I did it.
Okay.
Um, so I went back and I studied again. I did a diploma in specialty food production. Then I studied again. I did food marketing and rural development. Always really, really interested in
Mm.
food, how it's produced, where it's produced, who
Mm.
is producing it is my huge passion. Like, and a lot of why I do what I do as well is like respecting the people who I know.
Yeah.
I literally know them. I know their families, and I know the effort that goes into producing the food that they produce. So for me to be able to give a home to something that wouldn't make it to the shelf, that
Mm.
is like, just gives me so much joy.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I'm bringing it back to
Yeah, no,
we,
that's fine.
yeah, just food is like life. Food is my life.
Yeah. But what I excuse me, thank you for sharing that. And what I really appreciate about that story is the fact that the different ways you can work within the industry. Because if I and many other people hear of someone qualifying as a chef, they immediately think professional kitchen and
Yeah,
immediately think that that's the only quote unquote way
yeah,
you're going to be able to work in the industry.
yeah.
But the fact that you kind of the fact that you almost said, no, I didn't like this. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't, you know, and they think, oh, maybe that's it. But the fact that you continue to pursue just for the love of what you're doing and wanting to find out more, wanting to continue the education in some ways, then when the opportunity, this is where when I speak to people as well, it's like people say, oh, it could be luck or it could be, you know, just fate or whatever. It's like, but all of those years that you've been studying, working, when the opportunity arose,
Yes.
you're ready.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's almost like you didn't know that was going to be the opportunity, but when it came, you had so much in the background that you could just
That's all right.
run with it.
Yeah, you're so right. And I was actually acutely aware of that as well. Like
Mm,
I I had this belief in my brain from sort of 25, 26 that it was going to take me time,
yeah.
and I didn't know, but always at the back of my brain, I had this absolute belief that by the time I'm 40, something will reveal itself. And that was
Mm,
there all the time, all the time, all the time, no matter what I did. And I went away and I had two of my three children, and I was still, I've got all this stuff. I love food. Something will come. It'll come. And by the time I got to 39, I was beginning to sweat a little bit. I was like,
yeah.
but a lot of faith in that thought.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was sweating, and I was like, oh Jesus, I maybe should have been a bit more proactive here,
Yeah.
and met that girl, and I swear to God, James, it was like the heavens
Yeah.
opened. The heavens opened, and I don't know what, there was a transformation in me that day
Mm,
that was so profound that I absolutely knew this is the thing.
mm,
Like it was euphoric joy.
yeah.
And that was just on meeting the girl and saying I could do that.
Yeah.
And I'm actually getting a bit emotional
No,
now.
no, I can feel it. I'm getting goosebumps
Yeah.
from you saying it. I genuinely am. Yeah.
Yeah. I just knew, and I was so like I was grateful already that
Yeah.
this had revealed itself. And even saying that now, maybe I jumped on it so hard because I was waiting so long.
Yeah.
But and that is true. But also it has never been anything but the best thing that's ever happened to me. And
Yeah.
everything about who I am and what I'm about stems from that one amazing and miraculous opportunity from
Yeah.
a stranger in a park
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
say, "Yeah, okay, you do it."
Yeah.
Like, what a
Yeah. Yeah.
lunatic.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Yeah. But but isn't it? It's because I think as well that comes back to something we were chatting about earlier, when in relation to when you're actually in the events, and one of the things you said, which I think is really important, when you were talking about your staff and the customers and yourself and the couple, and you said the word connection, and
Mm,
it's so much more in a sense of the continuing. When I talk to people or myself, it's that whole thing of being able to make those really deep connections out of nowhere. So that
mm,
the story you just shared about that first client that you had, that first person that you worked with, and as you say, almost out of nowhere, they went, "Oh yeah, you can. Do you want to do it?" type thing. But it's
yeah,
being able to make those instant connections is what separates us. Or do you know what I mean? It brings us together and then makes us different from the other people. Because I'm sure, excuse me, tens or twenties or hundreds of catering companies out there that people can
sure,
work
of
with.
course.
I'm sure, of course,
Yeah,
and some of them I'm sure are excellent as well.
yes,
But
of
if you
course.
don't connect with the person that's going to work with you, then you're
It's
not
really,
going to be the same.
yeah, well, it's a really joyful part of what we do,
Mm.
actually. And I'm not going to sit here and say I connect 100% with every single client. I
No.
don't. I'm not. But
Yep.
for the most part, there's the most beautiful connection,
Sure.
and it's a thing where like people who've gotten married, I've done their christenings. We're some of them were Christmas card exchangers, and it's
Yeah.
not like my business to you; it's me to them. There's
Yeah.
really deep, meaningful connections and relationships.
Yeah.
And in fact, that first couple, they've become best friends.
Yeah.
We had a baby together at the same time
Yeah.
afterwards, and we went through a lot together. So
Yes.
you're right. You're right. Those connections make it so worthwhile. And like, just to say, you want that. I need that because it's physically, emotionally, mentally exceptionally hard work. Like
Sure.
I'm not going to lie. The stress of
Yeah.
thinking, because you're off site, you've got a rented kitchen, you've got a
Yeah.
generator going. So much could go wrong.
Sure.
But again, like not giving that any mental space, but holding that reality in your body,
Yeah.
that is deep, deep, deep levels of stress because it's all on you at the end of the day. And things, of course, do go wrong, but it's just having that ability to work with it and fix it and make it go according
Mm.
to, it might have to go a different way, but making it work. So that's something that I'm only comfortable talking about now, because when I started out, I was like, "Oh, there's no problems. I can do everything." And
Yeah.
but the reality is, it takes a huge toll on me physically, mentally, and emotionally,
Sure.
because I'm so invested in making sure that this is phenomenal for the people who are trusting me. It
Sure.
has to be out of this world for them.
Yeah.
Um, and it is.
Yeah.
It is. I've never touched wood. I've never had an occasion where
Yeah.
where it wasn't absolutely sensational. But like the come down from that for me
Yeah.
is unreal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and so having that beautiful connection with people
Yes.
carries you through that and makes
Yeah.
you realize, well, I did it for them, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I
And
did it
just,
for them. I'm glad I did, sort of thing.
I'm really glad as well that you shared that bit in the sense of, for all of the success and everything that you've had and you're continuing to have, it's not easy. And that's the
No,
highlight of this as well. It is hard work. There's a lot invested. It takes a huge amount of you, and I'm sure of the people that work with you, your team and everything. So there's a huge amount on it. It's that yin and yang. You can't have all that joy without the sort of the work and the hard that goes into it.
yeah,
So is there anything else, or is there anything that you do to help yourself in a sense of manage that's the sort of the stress or the work that comes with it? Is there anything that you do to help yourself in those situations?
yes. I leave gaps in my diary.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I I know my limits. I know
Yeah.
now what it takes out of me. And I know that I want to be able to continue giving it 1,000,000% for every single person.
Yeah.
And I just know that if I was working even every second weekend, that would be too
Yeah.
much for me.
Yeah.
So I try to do, for the summer season, sometimes I do 3 in a row, sometimes 4 in a row, but I try to leave at least kind of every third week. And
Yeah.
that's manageable for me and that's realistic for me.
Yeah.
Um, and on that note, then you see, money is irrelevant to me. Money isn't my driver at all.
Yeah.
Like it's and I don't say that from a place of privilege. It's not that I don't need. We all need money. We need
Yeah.
money to survive,
Yeah.
but I don't need tons of money. I drive around in an old banger. You know, I don't have expensive tastes. We would survive if I never worked.
Yeah.
We survived before I worked. We will survive
Yeah.
again if I don't work again.
Yeah.
So the driving force for me is not money.
Yeah.
If it was, I would work every weekend,
Yeah.
you know. But yeah, so that's how I manage it. I don't fill my diary.
Yeah.
I have a number that I want to do for the year.
Yeah.
Once that's done, I'm fully booked.
No, I love that. And as you say, it's um to me as well, though, that shows in a sense of coming back to even the whole question in a sense of this podcast, the importance you've put you've been able to sort of generate or create a sense of the importanceness of what you're doing. And it isn't to create a turnover of X amount. You don't, and it's not a target of I need to grow it by 20%. And it's not those numerical factors aren't your
No,
driving force. If I'm hearing what we've been talking about, it really is the couple or the people that you're working with and producing the phenomenal food on that day. That's the driving force. What can you
yeah,
do for those people on that day?
yeah, entirely. And
Yeah.
that satisfaction and that the memories that you're
Yeah.
creating for those people and the joy that that brings, and
Yeah.
yeah, and as a side to that, a really important part of why I do what I do is that my children get to see that you can
Yeah.
be. I think I'm a stay-at-home mum most of the time,
Oh,
but that I also go out to work, so they can see I can be there for them, but can also go out and get fulfillment for myself.
yeah.
And you can see that I'm choosing. They're 10, 8, and 4, so they'll know to varying degrees, but they know that I'm choosing to spend most of my time with them, but also to do something that lights me up and
Yeah.
sets me on fire. And that's so, so, so important to me, that
Yeah.
they see that I'm leading by example for them and showing
Yeah.
them that it's possible to create a life that really works for
Yeah.
you and your situation.
Yeah. Because I was going to say, you beat me to it in some ways, because I was just going to say, from going back to the very, answer to the first question, in the sense of your children being that most important thing. So was that also in a sense of the reason why you kind of only take so many jobs in some ways as well. So you're not, because otherwise it's like, well, if you worked every hour God sends, then you wouldn't have that time and opportunity with your children.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
Exactly that. Yeah. And I'm so grateful to kind of know that, to know
Yeah.
what's important to me, know
Yeah.
that I would never be happy if I was away from them all the time. Like
Yeah.
all the money in the world would mean nothing to me,
Yeah.
you know?
Because it's interesting. 'Cause it was one of the, I was going to ask one of the questions in the sense of going from that more sort of business perspective type thing, because it obviously you are, you know, created your own small business and that, and you're probably one of the first people in the sense what I've spoken to on this podcast who do their own small business, where in some ways it's kind of like, yeah, it's there, but it's not necessarily, you're the first person who said to me that very, very clearly is like, no, the money isn't, it's not to say, and again, it's this perspective. It's like, it's not that I don't want or need money, but
Yes,
it's not the reason I'm doing this.
at
So,
all.
how do you manage, in a sense, though, that having that to put some of that business hat on the odd time? Because, you know, in a sense of, do you ever have to put it on in that regard, or do you just go with it?
In regards of what? Of
So if
money
you're
or
doing like you've got to do like your accountants and your paperwork and that sort of stuff, or you know, is that just given to someone else, or do you, in relation to things like marketing, is it just you're just being you? Do you even consider it as having a plan, or is it you just do it as you are?
um that's a great question. I do have an accountant, but of course I have to do all my own filing and all that kind of
Yeah.
crack. And of course I'm completely allergic, but I have to do it. I'm not a numbers person.
Yeah.
Um, in terms of the marketing, the most successful thing for me has been my Instagram, and that is simply me turning up and being completely myself. There's no real plan there. No,
Yeah.
it's just kind of, and it's authentic connection, genuinely.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
some of my, and this is so weird, but some of my actual best friends I've met through Instagram. Do you
Yeah.
know, and that's what it is now. It's a real platform for connecting with people, and
Yeah.
I find that amazing. So there's no work in that for me because I really enjoy hanging out there. It's a
Yeah.
lovely space. Um, planning, I suppose yes, I have lots of plans actually, and I don't denounce the fact that I have a sense of for business or
Yeah.
entrepreneurialism.
Yeah.
Um, and I have loads of future plans and I have
Yeah.
goals. And, you know,
Yeah.
even today now, there's my first published article is coming out in Scoop Food magazine today. And I'm like, I
Oh.
can't wait to get my hands on it. I can't wait.
Yeah.
So I like writing. I've always loved writing, part of the whole creative brain. So that's part of my future. And again, I'm sitting in a space of knowing that will come. I'm not kind of
Yeah.
chasing it. It's there for
Yes.
me. I feel it coming. There'll be a book at some point.
Yeah.
Lots of different things like that. So I have nothing set in stone, but I have
Love
a
it.
very clear vision of
Yeah.
where I want to be and where I want to go and where I am going.
Yeah. No, I find that really, really refreshing in a sense of, and I would share that sentiment in some ways, um, because there's part of me, and I would kind of think that, I mean, because I've done it myself in some ways, where you write really detailed plans and write them all out, and then you look at it and go, oh Jesus, I've got all, you know, versus, and as I say, versus having sort of big sort of,
Feeling.
yeah, milestones in my head and said, oh no, that's, and then it's kind of like, and then being very specific towards that and kind of, and going with that sort of feeling and going with that more of that gut and going, and knowing that, well, if I do all these things, it's getting me there in a
Yeah.
way. But sometimes I find, you know, I think it's depending on the person, structure and stuff could be very, very useful for someone who's really into that sort of process.
Yeah.
But if you're kind of a bit more sort of with a feeling type perspective, then yeah, a plan can be kind of kind of constrained almost, and you kind of think, actually, no, I can't, because you're restricting maybe the bit that's the best of you, which is that creativity piece, you know?
Yes, I would agree.
Yeah.
100%.
Um, one of the things I'd always like to ask the people I chat to is about quotes or phrases, because I just find them quite interesting, and I think they can be quite powerful at certain times. You mentioned one earlier, I think it was like, there's no problem without a solution. You know, I think it's one thing you shared earlier. But is there any other sort of quotes or phrases or sayings that you find important?
Um, I suppose it's more of a sentiment that I live by.
Yeah.
Uh, Somebody may have written a quote about it at some stage, but not to care what anybody else thinks,
Mm,
basically. People are too busy living their own lives to care what you're at. And so letting go of any fear of judgment has been hugely beneficial in my own growth,
yeah.
self growth, and business growth. Like, I'm
Yeah.
just here doing my thing. I'm not waiting on anybody's judgment. I don't care. If I'm happy and the people around me are happy, then that's all good and that's all that matters. Like,
Yeah.
and that is freeing. I'd love more people to know that.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, totally. Um, and I think what I love about asking that question is when people answer is like, because to me that is you're completely living that perspective,
Yeah.
in the sense of what you do, um, completely into your business. Even the fact and sense of like the way you go, no, I'm only going to do the number of jobs that I want to do throughout a year because I want to do these other things, and for my own mental health perspective, fitness, children, whatever they may be, those other reasons why you don't take on more clients. The fact that you're doing that, there'd be someone I'm sure over here go, well, you have to do as many as you can. You know what I mean? This
Yeah.
other, and so you could eat. So some people go, oh, maybe I do need to do what that person is thinking or saying. But the fact that you go, no, no, this is me, I'll
Yeah.
worry about it, is fabulous. I love it.
Thank you.
You mentioned earlier, I think you mentioned your mum, and then you mentioned your grandparents in a sense of that food sort of influence.
Yeah.
Are there any other sort of people, would you say, that have influenced you throughout your life, whether it be in public eye or private, or maybe how they've influenced you?
I think I'll take that back to my mum again,
Yeah.
actually. Um, just incredibly hardworking woman, really entrepreneurial as well. Like, when we moved to London when I was 10,
Okay.
um, my dad had been there a couple of years at that stage, and we moved over. And I just remember her going off with a basket of apple tarts and knocking on the back doors of the five-star hotels. And suddenly she had this thriving business, Gertie's Apple Tarts. And we'd come in from school and peel apples every day. Um, so just that gumption to go and do
Yeah.
that out of
Yeah.
necessity, I have to add, like,
Yeah.
that was her way of sustaining us. Um, and several other things she's turned her hand to, and just the most hardworking, but joyful, joyous, loving, warm-hearted, incredible woman. And
Mm,
yeah, she's absolutely hugely influential.
yeah. But yeah, even that story itself, I can immediately then see you coming home going, oh, it's more apples. But
Yeah,
then
not again.
yeah, but also then having to be able to see then I'm sure with reflection and sort of then hindsight and stuff going, oh my god, that's actually really incredible to sort of have that. So you say, I love that word as well, gumption, to go, you know what, and as you
Yeah,
say, maybe one out of necessity, but even just the nerve almost to do it and ask those people.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And she just, that blows my mind. And
Yeah.
at the end of it, we'll say, she had four children, herself and my dad separated not long after. So she did that. She was cleaning. She did everything she had to do to provide
Yeah.
for us. And the respect I have for her, and to have maintained her level of fun and warmth and
Mm,
jollity through all of that, being a single mother on her own with no family support in London. She just is hugely inspirational to me, an amazing
yeah.
woman.
Yeah, I can absolutely see that. Thank you for sharing that. I can really see it. Orla, it's been absolutely fabulous to chat to you. I do have one more question for you though, which is, what's important for your future?
Oof. To continue leaning into my own light
Mm,
and shining that unapologetically on the world.
mm, absolutely. It's, as I say, Orla, it's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you. Thank you so much for talking to me and sharing everything you have. I want to make sure that people are able to continue to follow and support you. So we will share any links that you have in the notes. But if you want to give a shout out now where people can follow you online,
Thank you so much, James. Thanks for such a gorgeous conversation this morning. It
you're
was really
welcome.
lovely. My Instagram probably is my most contactable,
Yeah,
and it's Orla McAndrew Food.
lovely. Brilliant stuff. As I say, the link will be in the show notes so you can click on and follow Orla on her Instagram and keep in touch with everything that she's got going on. Once again, Orla, thank you so much for chatting to me today.
Thanks, James.
Thank you for listening to What's Important to You. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, comment, and share. And make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Again, you can follow me at James Dean Coaching on Facebook and Instagram. Connect with me on LinkedIn or find out more about me on jamesdeancoaching.com.